In this video, we're going to identify if a function is linear, exponential, or quadratic by simply taking a look at its graph. So far in algebra class, we've covered 3 different types of graphs pretty in-depthly. And the 3 types that we've covered are linear, exponential, and quadratic. And they all have a very, very distinct shape to them. So if you take a look at linear, hopefully what most of you are recognizing is that linear contains the word line. And that's because every time we see a straight line graph with 2 arrows on each side, what we really have when we have a straight line with an arrow on each side, regardless of what that line looks like, it's a linear function. And it's formed by the same type of general equation. So anytime we see a straight line with an arrow on each side, we have what's called a linear function. Now the second graph that we've been exposed to this year is called an exponential function. And that was typically what I called our swoosh graph. That's not really what the shape is called, but it looks kind of like a Nike swoosh. So an example of what this looks like is it literally looks kind of like a swoosh. Now my graph isn't great there, it's a little wonky looking, but you can see that it has that general swoosh shape to it. And what happens is one end grows up or down very, very quickly, while the other end actually gets very, very close to that x-axis. So you can see here in all of these, you either have something that's shooting up on one side or down on one side, and then the other side is getting very close to the x-axis. That was called our exponential function. So anytime we saw this swoosh shape, we had an exponential function. And then the last graph type that we studied is called the quadratic, and that was when we had our parabola shape. So we had those U's, they had arrows on each side, and they could be all over the graph. So these are just a couple of examples of what quadratic graphs looked like. So they were all in the shape of a parabola, which means they all had that general U-looking shape that was symmetrical on both sides.